Does Conduit need a lifeline? The truth is, this is a character that for a long time has had something coming to her. And whether you're familiar with what this support can do in Apex Legends or not, this is a great case study on why certain characters in video games kind of run their course and they need some changes either through their kit, significant buffs, reworks, or potentially to get canned. That's right, I'm talking erased from the game. No, okay, let's not go that far. But essentially, we've seen it done before. If we go into what Lifeline has had, she started out as a character that did one of the most powerful things in Apex Legends when she released on launch with the game back in 2019. And now she is a shell of her former self. Still viable, still good, but completely different after many different iterations. Conduit is close, in my opinion, to getting there. But before we get into whether she is actually a category for a full remake and whether you guys think so as well, if you like these types of videos where we talk about potential buffs needed, we bring in comments from you guys or conversations and things I've experienced around how the game should change, leave a like on this video. That means a lot. So I've been taking a look at Conduit for a while, and I think if you want to start at the basic level of what this character does, we have to talk about what they've consistently changed in her kit. The last thing that we saw Conduit get a few patches ago was actually a nerf. They took her base healing ability, which is she regenerates shields onto herself and to her allies with her Q, and they bumped up the time before that was available to be used again to 26 seconds. Recently, in a patch, we saw that timer go back down to 21 seconds. So essentially going back to its original state post nerf. So they had nerfed it, they brought it back, and this was also alongside some adjustments to ballistic, which obviously many of us feel like, you know, the brother needed. He's a very, very good legend right now. But staying on Conduit, this always gets me to think. If you saw my ballistic video where I lay down the problem with the character in my problem series, I kind of talk about those facts or those things that make a character, whether it's a difficult issue to design them or difficult to get them right, important. Maybe the things that are less talked about. And for Ballistic, it wasn't really his tactical, it was his ultimate, and it was the resetting of the ultimate. Not just for characters being able to understand how much of a threat or how long that threat will exist, but the inherent value given off a team that's already winning to continue winning and having an advantage over other teams. And so Conduit, in her way, we have to distill what is the thing that's kept Conduit valuable. Well, for a long time, Conduit was actually a very viable character. She was a character that many people considered like one of the best characters to start a match with because let's say you drop in, you immediately lose 50 shield. You guys all have white shields. No one's on the blue yet. You haven't been able to swap. You haven't gotten a kill. You're in the middle of that tango of a first few shots, and now you're locked trying to see who gets the advantage. Well, Conduit with her Q not only can give you, but herself, the advantage of getting maybe 50, 100 to potentially 150 shields back in that fight over the other team, which usually is enough of an advantage to win that early fight. It means you could play aggressive with her. You can combine her with compositions that want to run at characters, a la Ballistic, a la Fuse, a la Sparrow now being introduced into this meta, whereas maybe previously it might have been Maggie or Seer or Horizon. But Conduit would fit in that way as a support character. She also had the ability to be a part of the support class, which has one of the classes that has really not really gotten, I think, the reset, the revive of their class perks the same way some of these other legends have. The crafter does a lot of that work now, being able to craft your teammates' banners, get the mobile respawn beacon. And so supports, I think that there's room for improvement on what supports bring to the table. And they've kind of looked at, skirmishers, they've looked at different classes in this game, and I think they're going to continue to find ways to include the supports. But up until that point, Conduit was playing that role. What had happened was after they nerfed the impact of that Q, which allows you to, and let's just say what it's called Radiant Transfer, allows her to transfer a surge of energy to a teammate and herself, temporarily regenerating shields when in danger. Essentially, it took away what was her biggest element. Now, you don't always find out in a nerf what is the best part of a character, but in this case, we did. Conduit's, Radiant Transfer was one of her best things about her, and really the thing that made her a difference. I love her passive, which is called Save Your Speed, which is essentially one of the old skirmisher attacks. I'm pretty sure that that's still available for skirmishers, but the ability to be away from one of your teammates, look at them, and after a certain moment, basically gain 33% movement speed, kind of like the Bangalore double time passive, permanently, as long as you're in range, looking at one of your teammates and you're essentially out of range in terms of distance, getting back close enough to them. So it allows you to stay grouped. It allows you all to push pretty well. It allows Conduit to stay in the back line, but then be very close to her teammates at a moment's notice. And that's a really, really valuable thing to have, not just in game, but mid combat as well. So, she's got these great things about her. Her ultimate, I'm not sure if I love the barricade as much as some other people do. I think the energy barricade has one major problem with it, and I think the problem is the deploy time. There are a few things that will happen when the jammers, when they land, they take 4 seconds to prime. That is a very, very long time. It takes a very long time to actually get your hands out, deploy the ultimate, and I think that's a big issue. Not necessarily in general, but because the time to kill and the pace of Apex is increased intentionally with the design decisions that we've seen recently, I think she suffers from not having taken a look at that deploy time in this now faster paced game where you can die a lot quicker and you don't have as much time. You're more often punished for doing those elongated movements. I think that is something that eventually I'd love to see checked for Catalyst. And maybe just a little bit of, I don't know. I think what I would like to see too is maybe a little bit more damage. Maybe it's a little bigger. I mean, to be fair, when the jammers are out, I think they do their job. I think the energy barricade is a very good defensive utility ultimate. You're definitely not going to walk through it intentionally. You're definitely not going to try to get through those things. They do their purpose, but they take a very long time to get out. And so therefore, how valuable are they in the pinch that I need them if I'm not playing a set up Conduit, which in this zone, again, it's very difficult. You could play set up Newcastle very easily. You could play set up Watson. You could even play set up Rampart, but playing a setup Conduit does not have the same benefits. She doesn't have the redeployable shields. She doesn't have the extra mobile shield plus the castle wall that Newcastle has. She doesn't have the Watson fences that are easily put back up to create her perimeter, and the difficulty of sieging because of the pylon behind certain areas that would stop things like grenades or even a Sparrow Stinger Bolt ultimate coming at them and getting you out of your perch. Conduit is left without all of these, a very long deploy time, and if you look at even all of those things I just mentioned, Conduit's ultimate takes longer to deploy than any of those other things, all rival in the support class. So tell me, guys, what do we really need for this character? Is there something that can really buff her to the place where she can be, effective? Maybe, but I think that is probably, for me, one of the things that I see, as they just did here, not necessarily panning out. I went back and played a lot of Conduit today, as you guys are seeing, and I've been having some recording issues, by the way. I'm losing frames while playing Apex while on my machine. It got a little bit better while I was recording when I updated my NVIDIA graphics card, but I'm currently been running the same computer that's made content for the last 4 or 5 years for you guys, and somehow, for some reason, the frames are really taking a hit there. You probably don't even notice it. It's still well over 100 frames. So you guys, watching 60 frames per second on the video, you're not going to really notice it, but I notice it when playing. So if anyone has any side thoughts to that, let me know. Feel free to talk or link some videos that you think are helpful for making sure that OBS syncs, basically records without dropping frames while I'm playing Apex. Marvel Rivals, any actually FPS game right now, it is happening. So just a heads up, considering a dual PC setup as well. So let's go, we'll see. But, the way that playing Conduit, I wanted to check if that 21-second change to her Radiant Transfer made a difference, and I think it does. I think it does make a difference. She's definitely a viable character, but the question you always have to ask is this character more viable than any other character that I would put in that role? With legend bans in the ALGS, we've seen roles expand and different opportunities for characters to be played, because you can't play the most played character in the game previously in the next game. So if Catalyst was picked by almost every team, you can't play Catalyst for the rest of the 5 matches coming up in your series. So that means you now have to pick a new support, but that tends to be Newcastle, or people tend to now run aggressive compositions. Where does Conduit fit in, and does that 21 seconds bring her back to being that early threat plus that mid-game threat that she needs to be? And I'll say this, I don't think Conduit is enough of a mid-game threat. I think her early game potential is still very strong, but it's very difficult to imagine her ability to compete with these other legends in-game scenarios. And I think she's also not been adjusted enough to follow up with this new TTK. So my suggestion and my thought process and question to raise in this video is, does Conduit really need a lifeline? Does she need not only Lifeline in the sense of a change, but Lifeline in the sense of a rework in the way that Lifeline has? And I'll tell you why I feel like she's a really good candidate for it. Most oftentimes, the characters that are the most difficult for designers to buff or nerf or change are the characters that have inherent value within the game's internal systems of winning and losing, the metrics for survival, success, damage, etc. This is why you almost never see characters that suddenly can shoot 35% more damage out of a weapon than another character. This is suddenly why you don't see characters show up and can just randomly jump double, Sparrow, he's one of them, but that's a very pronounced, clear part of his design, balance, and kit. But you can see how good it is. You don't usually see characters who can kind of change the laws of physics for most characters in games. You don't also see characters who can change the laws of defense as often. You might see a shield, but you wouldn't see somebody typically take less damage per bullet. Apex is one of the few games that I feel really has kind of swung slightly in that direction, but not fully committed. And when there were egregious it's not competitors, but egregious people committing that crime, and I would say it's Lifeline, they made big changes. Yes, they put 5% extra damage on some characters, 5% less damage, 15% less damage when it comes to Gibby. These are things that, they felt made sense in terms of balancing the character. But that's also why they do it, because the second that you do that, you can literally shift the character's win rate up and down, because they're working off these metrics that are about how you play Apex, which is you take more damage, do less damage, survive longer, get more kills. That's just how you change a win rate right there. Conduit messes with one of the things that is basically the staple of Apex Legends' life source, which is shielding. And so she can actually extend the amount of shield that she has and her teammates have. It's the same way where Lifeline suddenly can get, with her old passive, 2 shield cells for 1 heal, and essentially heal much faster with that quick heal and get herself back to the point where she can, over time, have much more health than you across a bunch of fights, because she just heals faster and heals for more. This is what made Lifeline a very difficult character to balance, and why when they took that away, they made it a passive for one of our gold weapons, our gold backpacks and helmets and things like that. They changed gold knockdowns, they changed all these items, they put all these things in the game, they made them items. They have worked really hard to make sure that certain characters don't kind of break those standard rules. And they've reworked Lifeline multiple times now so that she doesn't have that as her own value in her kit. Anytime Lifeline has been able to kind of go against the way that you normally play the game and kind of get extra resources that are valuable, like when Aurora was playing Lifeline and basically rushing because of her drop care package to get to a purple and get to level 3 and essentially have all purples and reds for her teammates faster than everyone else who was on whites and blues, they took that out of the game, and they basically made that not something that you could do anymore. Conduit has that same thing, that same lever. The second you make her shielding too good and you buff it too much, it's over. Like, you're not going to be able to fight against someone who could just keep having way more shield than you. and it lessens your ability to counter that character. It immediately bumps their win rate up. It makes it a very defeating problem to try to attempt to solve, and ultimately it's not really good or kind of common for balance to go that direction with a character when they have these things like life and shield like at their own command that you can't really do anything about. And that's where I feel like Conduit could use a little bit of that lifeline. And in both senses of the word, a rework might be something that would help this character thrive a little bit more. Maybe it's not Radiant Transfer, you might be able to keep that, but maybe it's something of the way that her shielding operates, or what she gives to her teammates that's different. Maybe the Radiant Transfer isn't necessarily shielding. Maybe it's speed, and maybe it's, you know, I mean, a damage amp is very, very difficult, but you know, you look at what you could be given, what you could be granted, right? I mean, ballistics mess with reloads, he's messed with speed, you know, they've not gone damage, but is there a direction there where she can give them some type of movement capabilities with, you know, something like, you know, maybe the early ballistic knock, right? You get a ballistic knock. I'm spitballing at the top of my head. You get a knock, you get a little bit of shield if you get the knock, right? So you're rewarded for some type of play versus you start out ahead of the game. Is there something that could be valuable in game? Can you adjust maybe the energy barricade or kind of rework that altogether to where it's a completely different kind of model size, deployment time, and area of impact so that she's a different type of support character that can actually compete with Catalyst, with Newcastle, even with characters like Rampart who make quick and fast, you know, support areas, but are also very agile in being able to move those areas to other places. These are the things that I kind of wanted to address, and I think the Conduit, in my eyes, summarizing it, is definitely one of those characters that is in a position, after seeing how I wanted this buff to really make her feel like she's back, she's in business, has really made her still feel like she is not going to jump up into the pack of being viable until something is either shifted dramatically with the support class or with her kit. I want to know what your guys' thoughts are, though. Do you think they just need to decrease the cooldown yet again? Should they increase the value of the shields? Is her current kit fine, or does Conduit need a lifeline? And in terms of that, a rework that might put her into a better position of being balanced in the future and having a more consistent impact on both lower level and higher level gameplay. There's no doubt in my mind, Conduit is a fun character. I enjoy playing her. I know many of you enjoy her as well, and I'd only like to see more of her. So let me know in the comment section below. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and remember to never give up, never stop gaming, and I'll see you all next time.